This article is entitled "The War on Terrorism." I think we need some clarification of terms. The author of this article considers the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor an act of terrorism. Well, it seems to me there is a difference between a terrorist attack and an attack by a state, an attack of war. And yes, it's true, the attack on Pearl Harbor was an attack on soldiers, but civilians have often been the targets of attacks and huge acts of violence before, so I think our terms are kind of fuzzy, nebulous here. Anyway, the point of this article is that in this age of terrorism, let's say, let's call it, anyone can be attacked anywhere. And that's generally true. The main attackers are Islamic fundamentalists who dislike or hate Western, meaning American, what should we say, incursions into their cultures, Western influence changing the old ways, the sacred ways to them, anyway. Now, this recent incident, the killing of Kim Sun-il, certainly fits into this article's scope perfectly. But I see a lack of clarity here too, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. During the past 2.5 years, I would say, in Korea, with a rising of anti-Americanism kind of in the air, I've been watching this, and it makes me wonder some things. I've drawn a conclusion or two, which I'd like to share with you. The first incident that really triggered public, what should we say, rage, was as far as I remember, was the Winter Olympic farce when Mr. Ono, the Japanese American, he did have to be Japanese American, was given the gold medal, and the Korean, whose name I don't remember, was denied the medal. But what struck me at first then was, in that incident, was that the judge who made that decision was Australian. I've mentioned the Olympics before, and the incidents that followed, including the killing of the two middle school girls by the American tanks. Okay, it seems to me now this Kim Sun-il incident, there are Koreans who are, by a stretch, making this into an anti-American, somehow making this assume an anti-American dimension, or helping using this to fuel some anti-Americanism. When I see that, I'm reminded of the skating incident, and it seems to me the pattern here is kind of clear. I would say the cause of this is some of these incidents are fairly serious. The two girls, for example. If one takes numbers seriously, though, the incidents, a drunken driver here, a raped and killed woman there, two killed middle school girls there, these incidents are some of them accidents, some of them crimes. Sometimes maybe an American soldier got away with something, sometimes not. But what they reflect is your country's frustration at being kind of occupied by America, being under the protection, apparently having to be under the protection of America, and this is frustrating, kind of humiliating, kind of embarrassing. And if I were Korean, I would feel the same way. On the other hand, to let minor incidents fuel anti-Americanism when such major realities so far overshadow these things, so far make these things what they are, really, I'm afraid, trivial incidents. And this Kim Sun-il, we have it on film, it's true, but people die every day. And if we filmed the lives of the people who died, both before and at the actual deaths of these people, we would find these very moving too. We don't have them on film. Kim Sun-il is one individual. And yes, he was working for a Korean company that was selling supplies, is selling supplies to Americans. And so that company makes money from America. And Kim Sun-il, yes, made a living, made money from Americans. And he took a risk when he went to Iraq. Of course, what civilian what sane civilian would go to Iraq and consider him or herself safe? I mean, that's absurd. So the emotionalism that has been generated by this incident far, very exaggerated, far outreaches its true importance. And to use it, because I think that's what happens subconsciously by some Korean people, to use it to fuel American anti-Americanism is simply to use it to express one's frustration at being an occupied country. But the reality is, in my opinion, the reality is that the U.S. is here to keep peace in this region. And everyone in this region should be thankful to the U.S. Of course, we do this partly for our interest too. Peace means commerce, means trade, means at least the possibility of prosperity for everybody. War means death and misery, the cruelties and the normal things that happen in war. We've seen in Taeguki, which is a good reminder of what happens in war. We all ought to hope to avoid war, and if the presence of the U.S. here helps to deter that, it's a very good thing. And we all know, I think, that a U.S. withdrawal, I don't think it'll happen because even the U.S. interests are to be here, but it's certainly more to the interests of China, Japan, and South Korea, and even North Korea, that we be here. That's how I view it, and I assume everyone views it that way. My point is that I think we should, some Koreans should monitor their resentment of American presence and weigh its irritations, its worse than irritations, 2 girls run over by tanks, weigh it in terms of the cost, the big picture, the issues here, what's at stake here. I know some people, I don't think many people, but I guess some people would like to see the U.S. withdraw. And really, some Americans would like that too, because we wonder, why are we here? We're not in danger from North Korea. North Korea represents no threat to us. Why are we here? If we withdrew and if the North attacked, we could get here pretty fast. We are still your friends and allies. And maybe you would resent us less if we were not here, if these obnoxious GIs were not here, though some of the GIs are certainly very good people. Maybe anti-Americanism would greatly be reduced if we were not here. I don't think that's true, because I think the consequences would be, one, so the point of the article is that terrorist attacks can happen anywhere. They don't really, the author doesn't substantiate that very well, but the author lists the countries that are regarded as protecting, harboring, or encouraging terrorism. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Sudan. Remove Iraq from that list, I would say. I mean, that's not quite true, because the Kim Sun-il incident is a terrorist attack, I agree. Libya apparently is no longer on that list. Cuba, I think, is not really on that list either. So, but the war on terrorism continues, and Perhaps it takes a really glaring incident to remind us of these realities of the terrorists.
The War on Terrorism. 1. Why was Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor not an act of terrorism? 2. What is at risk of being a victim of terrorism? 3. Who are the main terrorists these days, and why? 4. What was the first incident that triggered Korean rage towards America? 5. What was the second incident which angered Koreans towards America? 6. What most recent event fueled anti-American sentiments in Korea? 7. What does Korea's anti-American sentiments reflect about Korea? 8. Why was Kim Sun-il taking a risk by going to Iraq? 9. What are the benefits of the U.S. being in Northeast Asia? 10. List the countries that are suspect of protecting, harboring, or encouraging terrorists.